local history, local culture, local events, your community. This is the Joe Kelly Show.
And welcome to the show, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Cheryl Pula is our guest. Cheryl is a local lecturer and author, and we talk about a variety of things whenever Cheryl comes in, anything from Custer's Last Stand to Gettysburg to, oh my goodness, all kinds of stuff. We'll decide in just a second what we're going to talk about, but we'll first say hello to Cheryl. Welcome back. Good to see you again.
Hi, Joe. It's glad to be here.
Before we get into some of the things that you lecture about throughout the area, I want to talk about the History Club that you are driving force behind. This is a reconstituted History Club, is it? Or
no, we started in 1995. We were at Dunham Library in Whitesboro at the time. And I had a customer who was a World War II veteran. And he would come in and say, you know, we ought to get a history group together because there was a lot of us who were interested in history. And, you know, maybe we can get something going. So I made up a little flyer, put it out in the library saying, you know, if you're interested in talking history, we'll have an organizational meeting on with the date. And I think we had maybe 7 people show up to the first meeting. And it kind of took off from there. And we meet once a month. At first, it was kind of organizational. And then we would try and get speakers to come once a month and do a lecture on history. And we're amateurs, you know, we're not professional historians by trade or anything like that. And we've been around since 1995. At this point, we've got between 50 and 60 dues-paying members. And our dues are like $10 a month. It started at $10 back in 1995, and it's still $10. I keep telling people it's the best buy in town, right?
Pretty good.
And the money is used for our newsletter. We have a newsletter every 2 months.
It's a very good newsletter, by the way.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have a newsletter every 2 months where we have little columns about history and, you know, upcoming meetings for various organizations and things like that.
And this is open to the public.
It's open to the public. Anybody who wants to come. You do not have to be a dues-paying member to attend the meetings, which are held at the New York Mills Community Center now, which is on Main Street just behind the post office. And like I say, the money is for the newsletter. Now, if you have an email address, we just send it via email. But we have about 19 members that don't have email addresses, so they get a printed copy every 2 months. The good thing about an email is you can get it quicker. Not that it matters, because I try to have it out at least a couple weeks before the next meeting to remind people what's going on.
You're the president, are you not?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
And you'll probably be president until you can talk somebody into.
Yeah, it's been a while since I can talk somebody into being president.
And you bring in speakers.
Yes.
Such as.
Well, my brother's done several programs for us. Whenever he comes to visit from Indiana, where he lives, I schedule him, and he comes in and talks usually about the Civil War or some kind of local history thing. He's coming in November on the 21st, in fact, which is the Monday before Thanksgiving, to talk about the foreign assistance that the colonies received during the Revolutionary War to help us win the war, you know, the French, the Poles, and that.
You hear a lot of, excuse me, Cheryl, you hear a lot about, when you're talking about this subject, you hear about the French assistance.
Right.
You don't hear about Polish.
Well, we had 2 guys. We had Kazimierz Pulaski, and it is Pulaski, not Pulaski, like the town, right? And Tadeusz Kościuszko, both of whom were Polish patriots who came over here to help us out. In fact, I think it was Pulaski is known as the father of the American cavalry, because he's the one that started the mounted horse soldiers over here for us. And they both contributed a great deal. They were both officers. Kościuszko was the one who built the defenses of West Point during the Revolutionary War. He was also the one who built the colonial defenses at the Battle of Saratoga to help us win that battle. So they contributed a lot, but you really don't hear too much about them.
Were there any other foreign entities that helped us?
Oh yeah, the Germans helped a lot. Of course, there were a lot of Germans in this area, like General Herkimer was
Yeah.
of German descent, you know, and all that. And so the Germans were there. And an interesting thing was the British employed the Hessians, who were like
Right.
German mercenary troops from Hesse in Germany. And a lot of them came over here to fight against the colonials. But once they were here and maybe were taken prisoner, many of them decided to stay here after the war because they liked it here better than back in Germany.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of them stayed here.
Yeah, and we had someone who was rewarded for his participation in the revolution by getting a bunch of land up in the Remsen area, yes?
Oh yeah, Steuben.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Von Steuben, if you're German. Yeah, he lived up, in fact, his home is still up near Remsen, and you can go up there and you tour it. I believe it's a national park governed site, and you can go up there and tour it. And I'm glad you mentioned that because I haven't been up there in a while, so I should go
reproduction,
go up there.
right?
Yeah.
It's a reproduction.
Yeah, I should go up there and take a look because I haven't been up there in a while.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but von Steuben was the ones who drilled the troops at Valley Forge,
Yeah.
you know, when they were encamped down there.
One of the things that I've always found amazing about that story is that he couldn't speak English, if I remember my history correctly, and so they had
That's
to
true.
translate
Yes.
back and forth.
Right, right, which was kind of clunky, if you will,
Yeah.
because he'd give an order, then it took him a while to translate it, you know. Then somebody else would go to talk to him, they'd have to translate it back to them, but they got the job done.
Yeah.
You know. So
And
they
some
did
of the
all right.
principles that he established way back then are still in existence today.
Oh yeah, a lot of the military concepts that he came up with are still taught at West Point, and a lot of the battles that he was involved in are still cited.
Yeah. Do you talk about West Point in any of your lectures?
Not too much. I probably should. Usually when I mention it, it's in conjunction with Kosciuszko, or if I'm talking about like Benedict Arnold
Right.
in that, because I went to grad school at the University of Michigan out in Ann Arbor, and I was reading a book, I want to say about 4 or 5 years ago, on Washington and Benedict Arnold. And they talked about the letter that Benedict Arnold sent to the British offering, if you will, to give them West Point.
Yeah.
And a picture of it was in the book. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. And down at the bottom it said, courtesy of the Clemens Historical Library, University of Michigan. And I thought, well, gee, I spent a lot of time in that library when I was out there, and I don't remember seeing that. Well, maybe a month or so later, I had a reunion of my class out there at the U of M, so my brother and I went out to it, and they had a banquet for all the alums from our school, which is the School of Library Science. And they had a girl there from the Clemens Library who brought in a couple, quote, historic documents she thought we might like to see. One of them was his actual letter.
Oh dear, yeah.
Benedict Arnold's letter to the British. And it kind of made the hair on the back of your
Sure.
neck stand up.
Was
you
it
know?
in good shape?
It was in really good shape, yes. It was very good shape.
When we come back, we'll be talking more with Cheryl Pula. She's an area lecturer. She comes in to see us from time to time, and we talk about a variety of topics. We want to also talk to her about MVILR.
Right.
She's involved with that, and she's going to be teaching a class up there. Short break, right back. And welcome back, everybody. Thanks for sticking with us. Cheryl Pula is our guest. Cheryl lectures a lot throughout the area, and she does it on a variety of topics. She's also involved with a history club. What's the formal title of the history club?
The History Club.
The History Club.
Very, very simple.
All right. And they're based over in New York Mills, but it's for anybody in the area. And she also teaches a class pretty regularly over at MVILR, which stands for
The Mohawk Valley Institute for Learning in Retirement. And it's for retirees who want to take courses just, more or less because they want to learn something or just for the heck of it.
Yeah, make some use of their time.
Right.
And the topics at MVILR really are quite eclectic. I mean, they range all across the board.
Yeah, we have exercise courses like yoga, pickleball. We have walking tours because they have when we meet up at MVCC in Rome, they have a sculpture garden, so they take walks through the gardens. We do Zoom classes and in-person classes on history, philosophy. There's a book group. There's a movie group that watches movies. Just about anything you could imagine.
Yeah, what are you going to be teaching?
I'm teaching a 4-week course in the winter, which is in January, called Hollywood and History. And you know how you watch historical movies and you see something, you say, that's not what they taught us in school or whatever. So what I do is I take still photographs from Hollywood movies like The Patriot or whatever with Mel Gibson or whatever it might be, and ask them to identify the movie. Then I give them 3 questions based on the actual historical incident or the person or the era depicted in the movie, and see if they can answer the questions about the way the history depicted in the movie actually happened, if there's any kind of discrepancy or anything like that. And so you kind of learn a little bit. It's kind of like a Jeopardy, only with history questions.
The MVILR, there's a fee for that.
Yeah, it depends on what you do, because there's a fee for the entire year, and there's like usually 3 semesters. There's this fall semester, which is 8 weeks, though you don't have to take 8 weeks because some courses are only 4, so you can sign up for the 4-week courses. There's a winter semester that's usually 4 because of the weather, during that time. And then there's a spring semester that's 8. And you can sign up for individual semesters, or you can sign up for the entire year. And the prices, of course, vary depending on what you sign up for. And I'm not quite sure the prices, so I don't want to say anything that I'm not sure about.
Yeah. Has MVILR come back after COVID? I know they stopped it for a while, right?
Yeah, they had to stop. At the time we met up at SUNY in Marcy, and they had to stop because of COVID, because everything was shut down. But then when things started opening up again, they moved from SUNY to MVCC campus in Rome, which is on Floyd Ave in Rome, if you're familiar with Rome. And the membership was down a little bit, but it's coming back up now that people know we're back in business, if you will, and where we're meeting, because we're getting people from Rome that we hadn't had before, So it's coming back up. And for this semester, the fall semester of this year, we have 60 different classes that we offer. 60?
60, okay.
With all different kinds of topics and like that. And like I say, you can take, there's a certain day when you can take just Zoom classes, and then there's days when they're just in-person classes. You have the choice. And you can pick whatever classes you want, sign up for them, and go from there.
I know my friend Frank Tomeno, a frequent guest here, has taught up there. He did a movie class too. I'm trying to think of what it was in particular, but so popular they had to move it into a bigger room.
Oh yeah, that auditorium, I think they put it in.
The auditorium. Yeah,
that happens because sometimes you think the classes might get a lot of people, don't, and I think the minimum enrollment is like 5. Then you get some that you think, well, maybe they'll get 10 or 15 and they'll get 100 or something, so they're flexible, depending on what they do with them.
Well, I know one of and I tell you this in advance, for some reason I don't like the story because I guess it depresses me, but it's the most popular lecture you give. That's on the Titanic.
Yeah, it is. In fact, it's the first one I ever started doing. I started doing it back in 1983 because a friend of mine taught at New Hartford Middle School. And evidently he had given his class a question. If there was any event in history you'd like to know more about, what is it? And they picked the Titanic. So he knew I was in the Titanic Historical Society, which is based in Massachusetts. And he called me up one day and he said, can you do a program, half hour or so on the Titanic? And I said, yeah, sure. Luckily, I had a little time to put it together. So back then, they didn't have PowerPoint and computers that you could use and all this. So I did a slide program on the Titanic. And evidently it was okay, because the word started getting around, and then I started getting libraries and other groups calling me to ask me to do this program on the Titanic. So once PowerPoint came in, I switched it over to PowerPoint and added some stuff, took some things out, edited it and everything. And usually around April, the anniversary of the sinking, and this year was the 110th anniversary, I started getting calls for stuff on the Titanic. And I just still like to do it. And it always seems, no matter where I go and do this program, there's somebody in the audience who has some kind of connection
such as
to that. Well, I went to DeWitt. This was several years ago, and did a program there. And there was a lady on...
Now, where was there?
DeWitt.
DeWitt.
Yeah. There was a lady on the Titanic, her name was Edith Russell, who got into a lifeboat, then got out again, because she had to run back to her cabin. Well, everybody thought she was going back for her $15,000 worth of jewelry that were in her cabin. She came back with a ceramic pig. It looked like a giant piggy bank, sort of. And she said, as long as this is with me, it's my good luck charm, I'll be saved. And she was. Well, it also happened to be a music box, so when you twisted the tail, it played music, and there were children in the lifeboat with her, so that's how she amused them all night till they were picked up the next day. Well, I did this program in DeWitt. I get done, and this lady in the back of the room says, well, I've got something you might like to see. And she had a shoebox with her. She opened it up, and it was Edith Russell's pig.
Oh, jeez.
And I thought, what's the chances,
Yeah.
of somebody having an artifact from somebody who was on the Titanic?
How did she come by it?
Evidently, that was her great aunt,
Okay.
was Edith Russell. Now, my grandmother had worked for a gentleman in Cooperstown, who went down on the Titanic. She was his legal secretary. Luckily, she was not with him in Europe, but his family had been over there. A.L. Ryerson, his name was. They had been over there on vacation and got word that his son had been killed in an automobile accident. So they booked passage on the Titanic to come back here, and he went down with the boat. Yeah. So my grandmother was out of a job for a while, but she found another one somewhere else.
When we come back, we'll talk about some more historic things with Cheryl Pula. She's our guest. Don't forget MVILR. That's upcoming. When does that start?
The classes are Monday through Friday.
And it starts when?
You mean for this semester?
Yeah.
It's already about halfway through this semester.
Okay. So the next semester?
The next semester will be in January, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah.
And they've got a website, I'm sure.
Oh yes, just type in MVILR.
Okay.
It usually comes up the first thing.
All right. We come back, we'll talk more with Cheryl. Short break, right back. And welcome back, everybody. Thanks for sticking with us. Cheryl Pula is our guest. Cheryl is kind enough to come in, I don't know, every couple months or so and chat about history and things. Is there any program that you're working on now that you haven't done enough research on to give yet, but you're working on it?
Yeah, there's a couple that I'm kind of working on that I just started doing. One is a World War I kind of thing. And another one is like an unsolved mystery thing. I had a series of books called It's a Mystery, and then each one had a different topic. Like one was on UFOs, another one was on unsolved murder cases and stuff. And the one I'm working on now is maritime mysteries. Like the Mary Celeste, which was a boat that was found adrift in the Atlantic with the crew gone, but the ship was intact. Where did the crew go? Nobody knows because they'd never been heard of. Another one was the fire on board the Morro Castle, because they know there was a fire, they know how many people died, but they don't know how it started or who started it, because they think now it was probably arson. So I'm working on that, and I'm also working on another one on mysteries of the Old West. Like, there's a debate, did Pat Garrett really kill Billy the Kid? Where's the Lost Dutchman mine?
Yeah, in Arizona.
Yeah, that kind of thing. So that's basically what I'm working on right now.
Have you done anything, talking about mysteries, on Amelia Earhart?
Oh yes, yep.
I
And
bet
that's
you
one of my brother's favorite topics.
Yeah,
is
I
Amelia
just am
Earhart,
fascinated by that story.
Yeah.
What's your thinking on that?
That's another thing. I'll get to that in a minute. My thinking is, by her own admission, she was not the best aviatrix in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And Fred Noonan, her navigator, was known to be an alcoholic. And her father had been an alcoholic, and that's why her parents got divorced. So she was against alcoholics. And yet, when she had her choice of navigators to go with her on her round-the-world trip, she picked him, knowing that he had an alcohol problem, which I always found weird. But my thing is that they were out in the Pacific. The navigation equipment at the time wasn't the greatest. It's not like we have now. They don't have GPS and all this kind of thing. And they got lost. They couldn't find their way, and they ran out of gas and went into the ocean. And one of the things that she had done before they did that last leg of the trip was to take the life rafts and all the survival equipment off the plane so they could put more gas on the plane. And if you crash in the ocean, and she'd never been taught to ditch a plane. I mean, no pilot is taught how to ditch a plane. They're told what to do, but unless you actually do it, that's probably the first and only time you're going to do it. I think they just crashed and that was it. Now, I did that program several years ago for the Optimist Club in Cheryl, and again, there was someone in the audience. When I asked, are there any questions, a guy raised his hand, and he was Fred Noonan's nephew.
Oh, jeez.
And I said, well, what does your family think? Because they asked me what I thought. And he said, we think the same thing you did, that Uncle Fred was not in the best of shape because they had reports from the various places they stopped to refuel that there was liquor aboard the airplane, and that he probably was not in the best of shape to be navigating that plane. They got lost, and they just crashed into the ocean, and they didn't have any survival equipment. So how long are you going to last in the ocean with no survival equipment?
There's a local connection to Amelia Earhart, a sister.
Her sister, Muriel, taught in a school in Utica for a while. And Amelia would fly into the old Marcy airport, and it wasn't unusual to see her walking down Genesee Street with her sister, chit-chatting and going into the stores and all that kind of thing. Yeah.
I know I came across the clipping years ago in the OD and was talking about Amelia Earhart being here to talk. And then there was another clipping about her being here. Mm-hmm. And I thought, well, why does she come here that often? And then I discovered that connection. Utica Country Day School, I think, was the name of the school her sister taught at. And you're right. And Utica had a good, Ray Ball, the historian from Marcy, did a lot of work on aviation. Marcy was the hub of aviation in our area. They had the Marcy Airport, the Utica Municipal Airport, but it was in Marcy. Yeah,
I kind of knew Ray. We had met a couple times, and I know he did a book.
Yeah, he did.
And I've got a copy of his book at home. So I knew him, not a lot, but I mean, I knew him to say hi to him and how you doing kind of thing.
And there is, and I haven't been up there in years, but there's some kind of a marker in Marcy that shows where that airport was, I believe.
Right. Yeah.
One of the things that we could always do a better job with is marking places.
Yes.
For future generations. I mean, there's so many things in our area, in Nida County, Herkimer County, that doesn't have a marker on it. I mean, if you know it, you know it, but if you don't know it.
Or it doesn't even exist anymore.
Right.
I remember going down south with a friend of mine who lives in Syracuse, and we were at Petersburg, the Civil War battlefield. And she wanted to see a certain place in the battle where one of her favorite people had done X, Y, or Z. And we couldn't find it, so we finally went to the visitor center. And she asked him, where did this happen? And the guy said, well, he told us where, but he said, but you can't see it because it's under the parking lot of a shopping mall
Oh,
now.
jeez. Isn't
Yeah.
that something?
Yeah.
And this was, where? Where was it?
Petersburg,
Petersburg,
Virginia.
Yeah.
Yep.
One of the things they've done, thank God, is at Gettysburg,
Yeah.
buy up land to prevent that from happening.
Right. Matter of fact, I was down there, this is October, I was down there in September. And if you go down there now, you can't go to Little Round Top because they're in the process of cleaning it up, trying to make it look the way it did at the time of the battle. So Little Round Top you can't go on. You can go everywhere else, but not Little Round Top. And most people go there to go to Little Round Top because they saw it in the movie Gettysburg, you know, and like that. So that's the most popular spot. But the whole rest of the battlefield is accessible.
Yeah.
And they've done a really good job there. In fact, there was a hotel there once near a restaurant called General Pickett's Buffet. They've torn that down because that was right in the middle where Pickett's Charge was.
Yeah.
And then up by Lee's headquarters, there was a Quality Inn until just a couple of years ago. And when I was there this past September, that's gone.
Well, when you come back, we're going to talk about Gettysburg some more because I could talk about Gettysburg all day. Thanks, Cheryl. Appreciate it. That's going to do it for us this week. We'll be back next week. We'll do it all again. Don't forget cnyhomepage.com. Lots of good stuff there. Until next time, take care of yourself, everybody.